To get started, I want to teach you my favorite spiritual idea. Are you ready for my favorite spiritual idea? It's called the GAC. Anybody ever heard of the GAC? The GAC stands for the Gospel According to Kelly. So what I'm going to say, and everything I talk about today, is my opinion. It is how I practice. Now, if something resonates with you and works for you, take it, use it. If it doesn't, that's fine too. One of my favorite sayings of all time is, as many heads are there are ways. Each person has their own pathway. And the great thing about being a polytheist, we can do it our own way. There's not a square hole or the square peg in the round hole thing as in other traditions. Now, a lot of people, why should I listen to this Kelly guy? I've been practicing Norse paganism, what I like to call Ásatrú, since 1994. So, anybody ever heard of a group called the Society for Creative Anachronism? The SCA. What they do is they get together and they recreate medieval history. They fight each other, they battle each other in full suits of armor, and it's really fun. I belong to that group. And one of the people that was in our group, her character that she played in the group, you develop a whole persona, a whole story. I didn't know anything about runes, didn't know a thing about runes. So I did what everybody did pre-internet. I went to the library and I found a book on runes, Edward Thorson's Futhark. And I thought it was really cool, but while I was there at the library, I went over to the bulletin board and to see what's happening. That very day, they were having a class in the library on runes. It's like, whoa, that's a little synchronistic. So I decided, I'm going to go to the class. It sucked. I'll be honest, it was really bad. Lawrence was a horrible teacher. But I got me in contact to a group practicing Norse paganism, and within 9 months, I took the oath of what's called the Galdr. The Galdr is the priesthood tradition in Norse practice. And I've been studying it ever since. Now, get rid of that. My farmer's hat. What can you do with runes? What good are they? First off, you can write with them. They are like an alphabet. We call them Futhark, but you can write on them. In fact, that's what they were mainly used for publicly, esoterically, was for like memorial stones and something that they didn't write like books with them, but they wrote things that they wanted to be remembered. So they wrote the runes on things. The rune stones are a way that we have them. The oldest rune inscription. Do you know what it says? The oldest one? Comb. It was on a comb. Someone wrote comb on a comb. So you can write with them. The second thing you can do is divination. Tacitus has example of them cutting sticks and then putting some kind of symbol on them, and with that symbol, they would use them to pull up some kind of meaning. So divination. Divination is one of the least powerful uses of the runes. I'll let you know. Another thing that runes can do is you can use them for healing, and that's what I'm going to focus on. Runes, they represent energy. They represent the energies that are around us. There's a woman, and she wanted to have a baby. She just felt she needed to have a child. And whatever her and her husband did, nothing worked. And it went on for years, and she just always felt that hunger, that need. And then finally, one day she comes out, and there's that lovely little double line thing on that test. And she felt so much joy. They felt that wonder and her husband and her were just over the moon because they have this child. Then they had that child. They were like having a wonderful home life, wonderful family. They're just all their things were met. And then they just something terrible happened. She got a phone call, and her husband was taking the child with him somewhere, and a drunk driver runs through the intersection and hits them. Both the husband and the child are dead. And her whole life was just devastated, just totally gone. Everything was quiet. Everything was just horrible. But then over time, she was set with that empty cradle, remembered how her husband would sing lullabies to their baby, and she would get refill that love that she had for that child. Now, why did I tell you this story? It's actually an example of the runes. First, she needed a baby. The first rune, Nathus. Nathus is the idea of the feeling of need. Anybody ever need anything? We need things all the time to be able to live. That's that need. It's the need fire. It's that feeling of need. Then she got her child. She became pregnant. Wunyo, which is joy, which is that happiness. And then they had that car wreck, that horrible car wreck. That's Hagalaz. Hagalaz is that change that just rips everything away from you. One of the most painful things that has ever happened, that can happen to you. But through Hagalaz, usually that's when we get the most growth, is from that. And then the last is where she was sitting with her child, remembering her child, having that memory. And that is Othala. Othala is our roots, our ancestry, that memory, that ancestral memory. And she pulled that back up. Also, with the joy, you also have Berkano too. Berkano is that, have you ever been a child and you go up to mom and says, kiss it better? And it's better? That's Berkano. That's that unconditional love that a mother has for a child. So runes represent all parts of our lives. One thing that I want you to remember always, everything is energy. Everything can be considered sound because energy is sound. The runes themselves can be sound. You can chant the runes, and that's one thing we're going to get into in a little bit. Now, I got a secret for you. Anybody ever write English? I've done it a time or two. And we use the Latin alphabet. The Latin alphabet also will transfer to some of the same symbols or the same energies. So the letter A, anybody ever wonder where we get the letter A from? It comes out of Egypt originally. It was the pictogram for a cow. And then they turned it for the horns are down. The letter A, it was originally cattle. And so a lot of what we're talking about with runes, you can actually do with the English alphabet. Now, I have a theory. Are you ready for my theory? We should be writing English with runes. It actually matches up better. Now, where does runes come from? The first origin of runes is the historic. As I mentioned earlier, the oldest recorded version just says the word comb on it. They just found, just shortly behind that, what's called a bracelet, which was like a pendant that says Odin's man in runes. So it's a new find that we have that dates it older, a little bit older. There are multiple rune rows depending upon where they were used at. The Elder Futhark is what I use, is our oldest version of it. Then there's also the younger Futhark, which was what was used in Scandinavia. And then the Anglo-Saxon Futhark is the one that was used to write English in England. One of my biggest pet peeves, are you ready for my pet peeve? I've been involved in the community for 32 years, and I have had people some say, I'm from England, I should be a druid. No. Most of England were actually Anglo-Saxon. We speak English. That comes from the Anglo-Saxon. They worshipped Odin and Thor and that pantheon. So just one of my pet peeves. People get a little off there. So that's the historic way. We believe that there's a couple theories on where they originally came from. There's the Etruscan theory, that they were a divination from Etruscan language through the Lombards. There's another, the Iberian theory, which comes that there's an inscription that's very similar to the runes that was found in Spain on the Iberian Peninsula. And there's a few others, but that whole tradition, we don't know for sure where they came from, but we have them. Then we also have the spiritual origin of the runes. I hung from a tree 9 days, sacrificed myself to myself. Odin hung from a tree for 9 days to gather the knowledge. He deprived himself of drink and food. I know that I hung on a wind-battered tree 9 nights long, pierced by spear, and given to Odin, myself to myself on that tree, grow in a place that no one has ever seen. No one gave me food. No one gave me drink. At the end, I peered down. I took the runes, screaming. I took them, and then I fell. By the way, it's the Jackson Croxford edition that I'm using for my edition. So that's how he basically sacrificed himself for the runes. And in that same part of what's called the Havamal, he gives some instructions that we should do. Do you know how to write them? Do you know how to read them? Do you know how to paint them? Do you know how to test them? Do you know how to ask them? Do you know how to bless them? Do you know how to send them? Do you know how to offer them? Again, that's Havamal, verse 145. So, first off, know how to write them. We're kind of given the command to know how the runes are to be written. So, to write them, to make the symbols. The second one is know how to read them. So that's divination. That's knowing how to use them for divination. The next one I like is know how to paint them. That's one of my favorite ones. Painting the runes in the translation that I use, but also in some of the translation is know how to blood them. It's basically making them come to life. When you make runes for working, you actually enliven the rune. You make it come to life. It has its own spirit. It will talk to you. They have been known to talk to you. I've had them talk to me. Some people don't like talking about blood magic. One of the common things would be you'd make a rune set, and then you would put a little bit of your blood on each of the runes. I usually do it anyway because when I make them, I cut my fingers a lot. But on with the story, the idea is to enliven them. This is just a set of cards that I made, that I hand painted. And if you notice, it has a red mark. Yes, it's paint, it's not blood, but it's my fingerprint. I used the blood or used paint in the place of, but kind of give that feel on them. Anybody ever make their own rune set? You can, and it doesn't matter how you did it. We did a prison ministry for 7 years. I'm dropping everything. So, while we were doing the prison ministry, they made it illegal for the inmates to purchase runes, but they could make them, and they made their own runes. And the thing is, what did they make them out of? This was what blew my mind to no end. Bread. They would take the bread from their meals, and then they would take and smush it up and make it thicker, and then kind of glue them together and they made runes out of bread. They were incredible. It worked really well too. So I made my own card runes. I'm a cheapskate. Just ask my wife, she'll tell you I'm really cheap. Over at the dollar store, they sell these Jenga sets. Have you ever seen the little mini Jenga sets? The little blocks of wood about yay big by yay big. They make great rune sets. And I've made about 4 or 5 out of them. And you get 28, so they're great for making runes. Now, where the runes came from is from a spiritual sense, is given to the gods, by the gods to us. Why did the gods give us the runes? As I mentioned this before, that story about the woman and the baby, everything is energy. And with that, the gods don't interfere in our lives. They don't get in the nitty-gritty of our lives. Their idea is, it's kind of like, I've always loved the image of the Newton's cradle, the thing with the balls, and you start the one ball on the one side and it clicks it over, It'll keep going as it's like a chain reaction. That's life. Life is that chain reaction. And so with the gods, what they did was they started everything, and they started that chain reaction, and we're living within that reaction. If there's something that happens we want to change, we can change it. And I don't know who needs to hear this. Are you all sitting down? This is something you need to hear. You're perfect, whole, and complete right here and right now. There's things you can change in your life, but you are perfect, a perfect creation right here and right now. You don't have to change anything if you don't want. It's only if you want things to be different that you need to change anything. Now, in the Nordic tradition, Northern Wisdom traditions, there's the idea of orlog. Anybody ever hear of orlog? Orlog is kind of like karma. The image I like is using is a sword, swinging through the air. The sword is actually the past. The edge of the sword, the edge of the blade, is the now. And the direction that that's swinging is the what's to come. With orlog, it's not like things, this is the way things are going to happen. This is the way things are, the direction they're moving in. When you do divination with runes, it's not, this is what's going to happen, this is what could happen, or the direction things are moving in. Nothing's written in stone. We all have free will. With that, we can change that orlog. And one of the things that we can do is we can use the runes. Now, with the runes themselves, I use the Elder Futhark. It works the best for me. If you want to, if you use a different set, that's fine. It's fine. It's just whatever works best for you. With the orlog, when we change things, we can actually go back. Anybody ever see the movie The Butterfly Effect with Ashton Kutcher, where he actually goes back in time and changes things? Using the runes can do almost to that level. If you're trained well enough, you can change the whole steps on the way. Now, within Norse tradition, there are three practices. The first practice is troth. That's the ritual. Today at 2, I'll be doing a bloat. That's the community rituals. Galdr is the rune stuff that I'm teaching now. And the third thing is called Saith, and that's shamanic practice. Within Galdr, the idea is that as you progress, you can make huge changes in your life depending upon what you want. Now, as I mentioned, the runes, the Elder Futhark that I use has 24 runes. They can be divided into a set of 8 groups they called them Atir. The reason they are called Atir, the word 8, Atir is the word 8 in Scandinavian languages. So you have a group of 8 runes, a group of 8 runes, and a group of 8 runes. And they will line up in a certain order within those 8 groups. And if you take the first 2 runes of each, and the first 2 runes of the second group, and the first 2 with the third rune, they will line up actually astrologically as fire symbols. And then if you put the runes in a circle, starting with the equinox, they'll line up perfectly with the fire, water, earth, air that way. just one of those asides. There's one guy who does runes, runic astrology, that's popularized in Nigel Penwick. His system starts in June 29th, and it just does not work for me. That's just one of the ones that just does not work for me. Mine starts with the equinox. Now, with runes, I'm going to start talking about a few meanings. When you do a rune spell, rune magic, you can make a change. And one of the things that we do all the time with runes with rune magic is we have to power the spell. You got to give it some oomph. So there are 3 power runes in the Elder Futhark. Should have had them separated out. The first power rune is the Wilo. It looks like an S. And are you ready? It represents the sun. So when you're doing rune working, visualizing the sun is that energy, that power that powers that rune spell. So Wilo is one of my favorite runes. I use it for almost everything. The second rune that is for healing is Kenaz. It looks kind of like a greater than, or is it less than? Pointed that way. And I always get those two confused. And it represents the torch. And what the torch is knowledge. Knowledge can be dangerous. Knowledge can be burning. That is the rune that represents what Kenaz is for, is that burning. It's a little harsher, but a little more focused. So if you're doing some kind of, wanting to do some kind of healing work, Kenaz is a great rune to use if it's like review, you want to bring something to the surface. You want knowledge to be seen. And then the last rune is Thurisaz. That is a power rune. Thurisaz is lightning. Anybody ever seen anybody struck by lightning? That's bad. That's really bad. Lightning is the most powerful energy that we can see in the natural world. Anybody ever, there's the idea that Thor is thunder. I have a new theory. This is the GAC again. This is my opinion. Use it. If it doesn't work, that's fine. So Loki is always known as been called the god of fire. But if you really look at it, he's never associated with fire. None of the stories have anything to do with fire. I think Loki is lightning that brings fire. And Thor is the thunder that comes with the lightning, and that they always travel together. Also, Loki's always getting Thor in trouble, and like Thor had to dress as Freya and to get his hammer. Hey, I'm going to marry you. Yeah. There's a story of Thor dressing up like Freya and marrying a giant. It was an interesting one. But Loki's always the catalyst. The energy of thunder or lightning, Thurisaz. It's the kind of energy that just blows everything apart. So if you have a problem that's going on in your life and you're wanting to do a rune spell for it, it's the power source that blows everything apart. It just blows it all apart. It's like a nuclear bomb almost. That Hagalaz rune also, but that's not the energy rune, but we'll get in that. And it kind of looks kind of like the less than sign, but then has a line that crosses the wide part of it. So Rune spells. I liked using a 3 rune spell, or a 3 rune spell. And depending upon what I'm working with, will depend which runes that I'm going to use. So I always choose a power rune. The first one is going to be normally Suilo, but I depending upon what needs to be done, I can change that up. The second is going to be 2 runes to actually work with the issue. If I'm working with healing, what runes am I going to use? I'm going to use first Lagus. Lagus kind of looks like an upside down L. It's water. What does water do? It cleans. It gets rid of this stuff. So if you're doing a healing work, you want to get rid of all the junk. If someone has bronchitis, you want to get them out of that stuff out of their lungs. Lagus is really great at getting rid of stuff. It washes it away. And as I mentioned earlier, Berkano, it kind of looks like a bee. It has two bee symbols. Berkano, people like to call it the boob rune because it has 2 things that stick out, kind of like breasts. And it's the mother love. It's the mother energy. When you're a kid, you go up to mom and say, kiss it better, and it's better. That's Berkano. If I'm going to do some kind of protection work, I'll use algaes, which is what it looks kind of like a person raising their arms. So, that's algaes. That's the Wilo. So when do you do rune spells? Anytime you have a need. If I have some kind of person calls me up and says, hey, I need some work done, this is happening, I'll talk to them through to find out what's going on. I might do divination to see a little more information about it, and then I'll do the rune spell. We're going to be doing a rune spell here shortly, and I'll show you how that works. Rune spells. Oh yeah. So the rune spells or the rune magic can be extremely potent. You can, and how you do it is by chanting the runes. You can write the runes onto something. You can do multiple of them. They found inscriptions that are basically like someone doing, they call them doing lines where they're writing them over and over and over again. And it's just was a rune spell. In the Yggdrasil saga, Yggdrasil gets called, was an Icelandic Gothi, and he got called to go over and do a healing work for a young woman, and she was just deathly ill, and she wasn't getting any better, and no matter what they tried, it was just getting worse. She was close to death. And so what they did was they went and he said, let me look at their bed. So he went and looked at anybody ever see a Viking bed? They slept in these little cubbies that lined the hall. So they took the cubby apart and they found a stick with runes carved in it, in her bed, that someone was trying to do a love spell on her. But they didn't do the right runes, and so she got sick instead. They removed that, he did healing work, and she got better. So we have record of runes being used for healing work and for spell work. And definitely it's not it's nothing that's been made up. It's something that we do have proof. Runes. With Galdr magic, you can, as I say, you can do a working and send it to someone. there is a rune called Rado. Looks kind of like an R. And what Rado is kind of like a travel. It means travel, it's ascending, it moves it out. That one portion from the Havamal talks about how to send. That is how to send it. Is you learn how to use the energy, build the energy up, paint the rune, and then send it. So you send it out. And so it will do something. Rado is what we'll use when we actually do a rune healing here in just a moment, or in a little bit. Now, with runes, when you're healing with runes, I just had a thought and it went the other way. What if you're doing rune chanting? You want to take and start the chant, and you're building the energy. You want to build that energy up. Build it up and then release it out with Rado. Send it to where it needs to go. Send it out. I do sort of like a Reiki session with people sometimes where I'll use the rune symbols and I'll build the energy and then transfer the energy to the person. I have a massage table. I'll have them go lay on and then transfer that energy to them for healing work. You can use it for that. With being a class, we don't have a long time to cover all the meanings and everything. So if you ever do want to learn more, if you go on Facebook, go to Ásatrú Utah, that's us. That's our group. We will be, we're rebranding soon, so just warn you if you see it change. We're going back to our full kindred name instead of Ásatrú Utah. People like our kindred name better, so we'll be switching, which is Northern Wisdom Kindred. So, yeah, using runes. So, also one of the things and the most powerful things you can do is you can also meditate with the runes. So, say if you're wanting to do some kind of healing work, choose 3 runes that you want to use, sit with them, and do what we call utaseta, outsetting, going out of you, out into the world to get that energy. I decided, I live in Ogden, we're in Ogden, and so I decided, I hate the freeway, so I decided to ride the bus today. And so it was one of the most enjoyable rides I've ever done because I actually just sat back and did my breath work, and I was doing some rune chanting in my head to get better settled, and it was probably one of the best trips to Salt Lake I've ever had. I don't normally ride the bus, so this was something new for me. My car is sitting in the driveway. It's not that I don't have a car. I decided to ride the bus to be a little bit more easier on our world. Also, you can go out and do, another thing that I love doing is going out and walking out in nature. And I don't know how many times walking out, I'll be walking out and I'll see a rune in something. I will see a rune out in nature. Fehu in a branch, Othala. When I first had went to my first ritual for the Nordic path, I went to this ritual, and it's what we call bloat. And in the bloat, we do the work, and I went home, and I could not sleep for the life of me. I was just so full of energy. And I had a friend that owned a bar, and it was only a few blocks from my house. So I walked up and helped him clean up and close up the bar. Went back, lay down, I still couldn't sleep. I just could not get that energy, rid of that energy. And I was laying there, and all of a sudden I saw a pair of hands floating in front of me. And then out of that pair of hands formed the Athala rune. I'm like, oh my goodness. I've never had that going to a Christian event. I saw this vision of a rune. Athala is our ancestry, our roots, our anchor. So I thought I was probably in the right place once I had that experience. So sitting out, meditation. Rune chanting. I've talked about that. I've talked about sitting out. Oh, and we can use runes within music. So if anybody's an artist, they do music, they can use runes in music. They can use it in their art. So if you want to put an intent into a piece of art, sometimes I know a few artists that will actually do what are called stick runes or dot runes. A dot rune, so as I mentioned, there are three what are called Atir. So they'll do a symbol for 1, 2, or 3, like one line for the first Atir, 2 lines for the second Atir, and 3 lines for the third Atir. And then which position they are in the Atir on the other side, so 1 through 8 on the other side. Or different dots. I did dot runes on these cards. The 2 dots and then the 8 dots for the position in the Atir. That's the second Atir, 8th rune, Swilo. So you can put charged things. Also, you can put the runes on things. There's famous the swords that have rune inscriptions on them. There's hundreds of swords that have weapons. And I got to tell you this story. Let's face it, some Norse pagans are a little full of themselves. And we hosted the Ásatrú Alliance, which is one of the largest national organizations, a few years ago. And we're getting out there and we do a naming of the steel. So you get your blade out and you do this ritual where you name the steel and you do a blessing and you pour the blessing mead over it. And they were coming out, tears telling all these masculine names. And they came around to my son, who was about 15 at the time. He pulls out his blade, and I named my blade Bob. It was hilarious. But you can name your blade and do it with power and do the same kind of ritual on that. How are we on time? Okay, so the next step, what I'm going to do, as I mentioned, we do rune chanting. And I'd like those who want to participate to come up and kind of like form a circle here. We're going to do a rune chant for healing. Right now, our world, our country needs a lot of healing. There's a lot of people who are feeling, there's a lot of stress right now in our country. So I'd like to do a healing. So if those who would like to participate, come up and join me in a circle here. This is an oath ring. So an oath ring is perfect. So we still have good sound. By the way, they're going to put this on YouTube, so on our YouTube channel. They won't be able to see who you are, but so this is an oath ring. So the oath ring is the symbol of your group, your coven, your kindred, your group, and We use it for healing work. We use it for oaths. When you become a part of our group, you say your oath on the oath ring. We use it for doing the blessing of the steel, as I mentioned earlier. We do it we use it for, it's just one of our basic magical tools. There's a whole chain of people who their oaths come from this ring. So if you guys, or if you would join me and just put a couple fingers on the oath ring. We're going to do an oath chant, or a rune chant for healing. First rune that I'm going to use is Lagus. Again, that's that water rune. The second rune I'm going to use is Wilo. That's the power rune. And the last rune I'm going to use is Berkano. That's that healing rune. That's Mom gets it better, and it's better. So that's what to visualize. And so we're just going to start chanting Lagus. Lagus, 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 Suilo, 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 Berkano, 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 Rado! Hail the gods. Thank you for doing the working with me. Now again, that's just a simple kind of healing spell, doing a rune chanting. If anybody wants to learn more, you can visit us on our Facebook page, Ásatrú Utah. It'll be changing to Northern Wisdom Kindred soon, but we do meetings. We do the seasonal festivals. I'll be doing a bloat here at 2 downstairs. And is there any questions about anything I covered or anything that I've done? Perfect. And it's 11:50, so that'll give enough time for the next person to set up. The next class I'm going to stay for is going to be done by Rune Rocker. He is incredible. He's one of my favorite other practitioners of the Nordic traditions that is here in Utah. He has a book out that is incredible if you get a chance to read it. I highly recommend staying for his class if you can. So thank you very much, and Hell of the gods.